would like to welcome our chair, moderator, panelists, and theme presenters for this very interesting session. We have our moderator for this session, Mr. Richard Schomburg, IEC Ambassador for Smart Energy, a Fellow and President RJS Energy. He has been Professor of System Engineering at Supélec, Paris, Chair of IntelliGrid Strategy Committee, and currently in charge of Strategy and Smart Energy Standardization Activities Coordination across EDF. We have our chair, Mr. KVS Baba, Chairman and Managing Director of Power System of Operation Corporation Limited. Sir has diversified experience of about 33 years in power sector. He has been actively associated with large-scale integration of renewable energy, bringing in frequency controls, introduction of ancillaries, etc. Joining the panel discussion, we have Mr. Mark McGranagan, EPRI Fellow and Vice President Power Delivery and Utilization EPRI. Sir is coordinating across the EPRI research sectors in areas of technology, innovation, as well as developing and implementing strategy for international coordination around all areas of innovation. We have Mr. Amarjeet Singh, CEO BSES Yamuna Power Limited. Mr. Amarjeet is a qualified chartered accountant with over 24 years of work experience spanning across diverse business like export, contracts, and manufacturing and power utility. We have Mr. Sandeep Bangya, Head EV, HA, and ESCO at Tata Power Company Limited. He has dabbled with entrepreneurship and startup ideas in the EV and consumer IoT domain for a while before joining Tata Power, leading these very verticals. We have Ms. Lonike D. Mutters, Director Standardization, ELAND NL, and Open Charge Alliance. She is responsible for the EV charging testing facilities, open standards development in secure EV charging, and is in charge of activities regarding the Open Charge Alliance and eClearing.net. We have Dr. Lawrence Jones, Vice President International Programs at Edison Electric Institute. We have Dr. Lawrence E. Jones is a thought leader and practitioner with over 25 years of experience in the energy industry. Under his leadership, EEI's international programs has more than 65 member companies with operations in over 90 countries. Dr. Jones will be joining us in some time. We have Mr. Anurag Johri, Managing Director and Lead Utilities from Accenture India. Sir has over 17 years of experience in strategy development, digital transformation, sales and marketing, and large-scale program management. We have Mr. Anant Venkateshwaran, Director, Master Classes, ISGF. Sir is an experienced industry professional with over 2 decades of international experience in business, financial, regulatory policy, and many more aspects. Sir is likely to join us today. For the theme presentations, we have Dr. Killian McKenna. Sir is a senior researcher, electrical engineer, and principal investigator at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory. Dr. McKenna is an R&D 100 award-winning researcher and leads projects in the area of distributed energy resources. Without any further ado, we will start with our session. But before that, may I request all the speakers to kindly turn on their cameras for a group picture. And can we have a big smile so that we can have a good group picture? Can we have a big smile?
Sorry, I'm on the road, so you have to bear with me.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much to all our speakers. I would like to hand over the stage to our moderator, Mr. Richard Schomburg, to take this session forward.
Thank you very much for this kind introduction. We are now starting a very exciting, I would say even thrilling session on a very, very hot, if not a burning topic, which is this renewable energy, incredible deployments with a lot of benefits, but also coming with a lot of challenges. And of course, this very interesting value proposition to actually also work and invest on electric vehicle integration that might be some kind of solution to help integrating and balancing this a huge intermittent possible generation. So we will have actually two presentations that will first frame the session, and then we will have a number of presentations coming from a major research institute, EPRI, to present actually globally what can be done and propose some kind of summary action plan of challenges to be addressed. And this will be followed by two presentations from major leading Indian utilities. Then we will have a presentation of what's going on in a European country, actually the Netherlands, who is really a front runner there. And we will have a testimony and advice recommendations from an association of investor-owned utilities, an international association, EEI. We will then have also a very, very interesting presentation of what can do major consultancy firms. So without any further ado, I would like first to give the floor to our chair, Mr. Baba.
Yeah, good afternoon. Am I audible?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Richard, and thanks to ISGF, Mr. Reggie Pillai, and the organizer for today's seminar, DUM. First, I was being a system operator at the national level. I was thinking I was not the right person to be chairing this session on the distribution, especially. So, but I was prevailed by Mr. Reggie Pillai, so I'm here. So thanks to you, and good afternoon, all gentlemen who are here and excellent panelists. On a lighter side, I would like to start. This actually is an interesting topic: is RE and EV integration with the distribution grid. So the E in RE is energy, and actually EV is evolution. So the newest evolution, basically. So when you are connecting this RE with EV, it is basically a revolution. The evolution and renewable is a revolution. So, and this is will rev up the entire distribution arena. So I thought this is an interesting topic. I thought I should, being a system operator at the national grid, let me understand, or let me see what is there. So it is definitely a challenging, no doubt, and it is a very relevant, as Mr. Richard has spoken in his opening remarks. Yeah, it is really going to be a good challenge to, I mean, apart from the finances, but as an engineer, it is really definitely a challenge. So we should all be prepared for these challenges. And basically, though the EV is only at about 2% of, as per IEA expectations are study. It is on Indian. By 2030 it will be of 2% only. However, it has many challenges. So, and especially there are a lot of changes that are taking place in the distribution. So many, I mean, I should not use the word complication, but it is a technological interventions are many. Over the years, our consumer has become more, expecting a lot from the grid. So in terms of quality, in terms of reliability, in terms of economy also. At the same time, with this economy, he has many appliances, and those appliances have changed the pattern. Not only the time of use of appliances, depending on economy is growing, so the lifestyles have changed. So it has impact on the demand shape. So how these things, and one more important is, while the economy is growing, space cooling is also coming as an important aspect which to study in the distribution. So therefore, without these electric vehicles or the renewables, as such, there is a change in the distribution system and the load shape. Of course, we all system operators look for, it is a, the culmination of all the varying load shapes coming onto the national level. So it has an important aspect in our performance also. So with these aspirations and expectations, now what is happening is a new introduction is the renewables, rooftop solar, that is behind the meter, so a resource. And that is adding another dimension to the distribution system managers, basically. So looking into the advent of renewables, a lot of policy interventions have taken place and by various governments. I would be restricting my exposure only to India. I'm not talking about the Europe or the other developing area. But of course, the technology and intervention will always be similar at any place. Only the scale changes, but the complexities will remain same. So various governments and state regulatory commissions have come up with a lot of policies encouraging rooftop solar. There in a rooftop solar also a lot of options were there. A single consumer connecting to a net metering, or a developer or an entrepreneur are trying to do at his level. And there are many models on a community level where the complexity is peer-to-peer, and a lot of blockchain technology, a lot of technology is coming up. That's a great subject now to pursue. Apart from these things, commercial aspects are also there. A lot of challenges are there, which as a technical person, there is a forecasting, how the system or manager or a system operator is scheduling, how he is contracting his energy. There is one level of integration of renewables with the distribution and the national grid. Now, another dimension is the introduction of electric vehicle. So now, with the so much of proliferation of electric vehicles taking place in India, of course, in the world is taking place, in India is also coming up, and it's going to be one of the, and I've already told that the electric vehicle as such may not impact the national grid, but definitely yes, the distribution, there are a lot of aspects that have to be seen. So the impact is and manifold, I would like to say. Distribution should be prepared for how to create, where to create the charging infrastructure, what commercial mechanism should be available, and what are their behavioral pattern, assessment of charging requirements, like so it is syncing with the solar. See, the interesting thing is in these electric vehicles is how to estimate charging needs and profile, whether it is to be charged at home or charged at the work, or where to create the charging stations and parking lots and all, where it is to be done, how to do it, how to optimize. So, it is a very interesting, and I'm hopeful that one of these sessions in this very experienced people are there will come out with the solutions, or will give a solution. How they are taking up these various aspects. So at this juncture, so there are so many new role players are emerging. One is the distribution system operator. There is a large important, he's there and he has a large role to play. Then on the EV side, a lot of aggregators and all are being developed. So there is a lot. And one more interesting thing in here is it is a synergy between the various sectors. So far, only renewable integration is only within the electricity sector. But once we have entered into the electric vehicle, we are entering into the transportation sector, replacement of a oil, petrochemical sector. So there are a lot of things which are coming up, and I mean, a whole gamut of things are changing. So it's a very interesting subject, definitely. And I wish that research in this subject will pave way for more economic option to the ultimate consumer. The general public should be bring smiles to all common man, entire with clean air. So the renewables with electric vehicle, definitely I wish that a lot of research is expected and will definitely take place. So I mean, this is a very important session and a very important subject we have to continue. And so I wish you all the best. And thanks to the organizers for giving me this opportunity to share my views on this subject. Thanks a lot. Thanks, Mr. Richard. I hope I have limited in my limited time.
Thank you. Thank you very much, Mr. Baba, for actually sharing with us well, ideas, views on challenges, but also a lot of expectations. And now, without any further ado, let's come up with the framing presentations of the theme of this session. And I would like to invite Killian McKenna to actually share with us his researcher perspective.
Hey, thanks, Richard. Just want to check, can people hear me?
Yes, perfectly.
Okay, great. Thanks so much. Yeah, so great introductions there. This is a huge challenge. There's some really interesting work going on in India, and we at the National Renewable Energy Laboratory, the kind of flagship laboratory for the Department of Energy for energy efficiency and renewable energy, have been trying to work closely with DISCOMs around India on this challenge on integrating renewable energy, specifically rooftop solar and electric vehicles. One thing that we see is that India has very ambitious targets with renewable energy and especially with electric vehicle integration. And largely for solar growth, most of that has been non-rooftop. So large systems connected to the bulk power system, but rooftop is growing rapidly. Right now, there's a total of 5.1 gigawatts estimated rooftop solar connected by kind of July of this year. And the annual growth rate is 116%, averaging between 2012 and 2018. And most of that is from the commercial and industrial sector. So there's still a huge amount of growth for the domestic sector that could be seen. For electric vehicle sales, they're also growing rapidly, but as our moderators were talking about, there's still a very small percentage of total vehicle sales. But what we're really seeing with both of these technologies is that we're at the start of that S curve in terms of adoption. We're really approaching that kind of exponential increase in adoption in both electric vehicles and in rooftop solar. One of the kind of challenges for DISCOMs is trying to understand what is the tariff structure that is going to work, and how can we interact with these DERs to maximize the benefits for the customer and also for the utility. And what are the kind of untapped benefits? And really, DER should benefit both the customer and the grid. Everyone should be benefiting here. But that requires some work on the DISCOM side to understand, how do we integrate solar? How do we maximize the benefit? How do we leverage smart inverter capabilities? And how do we know how the net load profile is going to change and optimize charging patterns? And really at NREL, we've been working a lot with DISCOMs across India, specifically in Delhi and Tamil Nadu, to try develop some open source tools and work with planning engineers in India to aid DER integration. One of those pieces that we're working with BRPL in Delhi is this evolution of price plans. So we've seen this evolution across utilities across the world, and most utilities are at different stages here depending on the level of DER adoption. But we've seen this evolution from flat rate tariffs to time of use to incremental block, motivated by trying to reduce peak demand and energy efficiency, to multi-tier tariffs to motivate good kind of charging patterns for the net load and for the grid for electric vehicles, towards this kind of this evolution as we go and start looking at more solar, where we start to look at net energy metering and feed-in tariffs, and kind of this, we've seen some utilities in the US and particularly in Hawaii and in Arizona look at zero export tariffs and demand charges. And the evolution is continuing, and no one has worked out the perfect price plan yet. I heard earlier on the session regarding AMI, people kind of raising the idea of real-time tariffs or transactive energy markets. I see that coming down in the future, but utilities will go through this evolution of trying to find the right rate structure. And part of this is, that rate structures are going to move slowly due to the nature of trying to get customers on board and trying to motivate things. But depending on where you are in that S curve in terms of adoption, you might want to try accelerate the adoption of rooftop solar, and then you might want to be trying to slow it down later in terms of recovering fixed costs. So it's very important to try to look ahead and be proactive as a utility to see what kind of DER levels are coming down and how can I maximize that benefit. For solar integration, the challenges there are really visibility and kind of dealing with this interconnection queue in terms of the amount of applications coming through to DISCOMs. And once you've got the right tariff structures and once you've financially valued solar properly, which is a difficult question, you're going to start having a flood of solar applications coming in. And that is a challenge for utilities to try to deal with that. We worked with Tangeco in Tamil Nadu with their distribution planning engineers to try to develop a solution to help them assess the risk of any emerging PV. And what we saw there, especially for distributed rooftop solar, is that when you start to increase the level of solar, that rooftop solar on distribution networks was having a more enormous benefit, and particularly in terms of improving power quality and increasing grid edge voltages, which was a benefit for that utility. And that's where we also investigated the use of advanced inverter functions, namely volt var and volt watt, to help control grid edge voltages. And I think there's also opportunities to leverage smart inverters for power quality needs overall, beyond the needs of solar integration challenges themselves. Depending on the state of a utility, whether they're seeing traditionally, if they're already seeing power quality challenges in terms of low voltages, integrating rooftop solar can actually help. And to make those assessments, though, there's an enormous amount of data requirement that needs to go into this in terms of looking at their geographical information systems, looking at their billing, and if they have any AMI, trying to get weather data or radiance data, using their SCADA to understand what their load profiles were. And that's where we've been building these frameworks to try to take all of these diverse data sets and bring them together in an integrated manner so planning engineers can use them to look at, okay, what's the risk network? Is this next solar application going to cause any problems, or is it just going to benefit the utility? What's the impact on my asset lifetime? Do I need to be making any upgrades? How is the efficiency of power delivery being affected? So there's a lot of things that distribution planning engineers need to look at when they start to see solar integration. I think another excellent point that was already made was when you're looking at distributed energy resources, whether that's solar systems or batteries or electric vehicles, you can't look at them in isolation. All of these changes are coming down the line together. So when you look at, say, a 2030 or a 2035 scenario, it's not adequate to just say, okay, what is solar's impact going to be? You also need to be looking at what are electric vehicles going to look like? Is there going to be any other changes to the demand side? Is there going to be greater adoption of HVAC equipment? What kind of energy efficiency measures do we see coming along? Because all of these things are going to work in tandem on the network, and they're all going to impact each other. But the utility also has a direct impact on what those net load profiles are going to be. They can control things via interconnection standards and requiring smart inverter functionality and requiring ancillary services from some of these DRs. And they can control things via tariffs, controlling when they think it's optimal for, say, electric vehicle charging. So there's a lot of different things that the utility can control. And really, you need to be working on both of those things. You need to be looking at what adoption levels are going to come down, what things do I have control of, and how is that going to impact the net load profile? For India, I think there's going to be a lot of unique aspects with the electric vehicles, especially there's going to be a difference in two-wheelers and three-wheelers and four-wheelers, that there's going to be different charging patterns for each of those. Depending on whether people are primarily charging at home, we've heard talk of battery swapping for say, e-rickshaws. And what is that distribution going to be between charging at home and charging at work? Because that's going to affect the timing of charging. One thing that we looked at with BYPL in Delhi was looking at using battery systems as a means of peak shaving as an alternate to network upgrades. So if you don't have control over the net load profile in terms of what DRs are doing, can you use battery systems as an alternate to try reduce those kind of high peak to average ratios on the net load profile, and can those be of assistance? So we're all about trying to develop open source tools for DISCOMs in India to try help a small amount with some of these challenges that are coming down the tracks. Trying to develop these tools for solar integration, or looking at net load profiles, or looking at different tariff evolutions. So yeah, definitely excited to hear more on the discussion today. I think we're only at the beginning of this. It's an exciting time to be a planning engineer, a distribution planning engineer right now. It also might be a scary time, but I think there's a lot of interesting things coming down the tracks, and I'm looking forward to hearing about everyone's work. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Gillian, for so well raising all the key questions. And also you introduced this magical wildcard of storage in the discussion and the debate. And we have a second framing presentation for the theme on the program. And I don't know if Rodney McGee is here with us. Hello? Is Rodney McGee?
I would like to inform that Dr. Rodney will not be joining us today.
Yeah, okay. So you know what? Okay, we're gonna miss him.
Some medical emergency, sir.
Yeah, we miss him, but it's actually a very good news, because his wife was expecting very shortly a baby. So so of course we wish them all the best, and God bless them with a healthy baby. Actually, I looked at his presentation, and I will encourage you to look at his presentation afterwards, where he's making a very interesting point, which is that probably the most critical challenge is policy and standards rather than just the technology issues. And he is saying that, being himself an engineer. So I think having those two introductions from Gillian and Rodney, now without any further ado, I like that we move forward and invite Mark McCranaghan from EPRI to share with us a very, very good synthesis of what's going on in the world of the utilities, and of course come up with some suggestions about the plan, if not a roadmap, but a plan and a list of all the challenges to be resolved. The floor is yours, Mark.
Really appreciate the opportunity to join you. I'll just check. Can you hear me okay?
Perfectly.
Yeah, that's great. Always love being on a panel with Richard because we get such a great perspective and summary of events going on around the world and developments. And kind of interesting today to hear from Killian in Colorado, being a good Irishman and ambassador of the excellent decarbonization and wind integration work going on in Ireland. And I'm coming at you from Ireland. So we kind of switched places today. Killian's a good friend and a coordinator with EPRI over a long period. And we continue to work together with NREL to move forward on some of those objectives that Killian mentioned, in particular, open source tools that can benefit the whole industry. This should work out good because my discussion is pretty much a level setting discussion as well, setting the stage in terms of where the technology is going and what our in particular what our research needs are to get there in terms of increased renewable integration and how distributed resources like electric vehicle charging can help us down that path. And of course, it does start with the continued penetration of renewables, and many times now renewables and batteries to make them a little bit friendlier player in the as they get integrated with the grid. Oops. Let's see if we can keep going forward here. And it is about economics. And of course, the cost of solar and wind keeps coming down. And as we probably, India has done a good job of kind of waiting a little bit for Germany and China and others to continue, and the US to push the cost of solar down to where now it really is the most economic generation resource. And it makes all the sense in the world for India to deploy it on a very large scale. So the economics and the objectives of decarbonization really come together nicely there. But as we continue to implement more and more solar and or wind, whether it's distributed or whether it's local, at an overall system level, it does create a tremendous need for flexibility resources, both capacity resources and other ancillary services for the intermittency and the storage requirements that are created by continued penetration of solar energy. And that's kind of exciting because as Killian mentioned, and as we've heard, we have to do all these things together in order to meet our decarbonization goals. We have to decarbonize the electricity generation, but we also have to decarbonize other energy sectors. And that means broad deployment of electric vehicles and the charging associated with that. So we can take advantage of that increased load to use the solar energy that we generate by adding more solar. And we can do that by managing our charging and when we charge and at what rate we charge so that it can be actually support the flexibility requirements of the grid rather than be a burden on the grid. And coordinating that with grid integrated storage, as Richard mentioned, storage is absolutely key. Batteries, other types of storage being developed, kind of integrated with electric vehicle charging has huge potential. And even as we go forward, I'm actually coming from a meeting yesterday in the Dingle Peninsula, which is the far western part of Ireland, where the ESB, the distribution system operator here, has a great initiative looking at how customers with PV on their rooftop, with heat pumps for electrifying their heating needs, and for vehicles, including vehicle to grid integration. They have 5 households with vehicle to grid chargers and looking at how that can be integrated with the grid. So very exciting times to see how these resources can align with the integration of wind here in Ireland or solar in India. Let's look at the economics. This is one study that was done in California by UC Davis, and just looking at California decarbonization goals and how that's going to be accomplished, and how important it is that we first of all decarbonize the generation. So even if we got 100% electric vehicles by 2045 in California, we would still have tremendous carbon impact if we don't also decarbonize the generation in the state. But the second bar really illustrates, as we decarbonize the generation and we decarbonize the transportation sector, we can have a tremendous impact. And the third part, which is about 13% additional savings in carbon production, happens if we do the electric vehicle integration with smart charging. And that also has associated with it a significant savings in the grid infrastructure that's required, because we can use the smart charging to defer required upgrades to the grid to support that additional load. And in California, their estimate was that's about $30 billion in grid infrastructure costs between now and 2045 that could be saved through smart charging applications. So very exciting. So what are we doing? What do we need to do? One key area of development, and fits right in with this open source goal that Killian talked about, is we need platforms that help us integrate the charging with the operations of the grid, and with a variety of other use cases as well. And we need platforms to do that. So the need for the industry is really to characterize the use cases, look at the information transfer requirements, and convert that into open source tools in terms of a platform that can provide APIs and provide interfaces that allow charging network providers, building energy management systems, home energy management systems to integrate with utility distributed resource management systems and demand response systems, and become part of the way that we operate the grid. So this is one big area that's being developed. The California Energy Commission has a number of activities in this area. NREL is involved in them. So it's a really important area that coordination with the developments in India and elsewhere in the world will make a lot of sense. The one other area that I wanted to mention is resiliency, and the value stream associated with resiliency that can come from electric vehicles. I think it's absolutely huge. We're starting to see it in California associated with wildfire protection and households that might get turned off for safety shutoffs associated with wildfires, implementing storage, electric vehicles with vehicle to grid capability, and PV as a way to provide local resiliency. And this can be done at a household level. It can be done at a community level. There's a great project outside of Washington, D.C. in Maryland called the Fairmount Heights Project, looking at how a whole community, a low income community, can combine low cost solar storage, make it into a microgrid for the community, shared resources for the community can be used to build a microgrid that provides local resiliency. And I think this has very important implications in India as well. We have a concept called the Smart Power Integrated Node, which is basically a microgrid in a box, where you have a local controller that can interface with vehicle to grid, electric vehicle charging, prioritizing the loads that are being protected in the home, linked to solar and storage as well, and provide the isolation interface to the grid that allows the microgrid to operate. So huge opportunity for resiliency as a very important additional value stream. So with that, I'll just summarize with what I think some of the real challenges that we have to face together as an industry, and there are opportunities for laying a foundation with open source tools that the whole world can build on. It starts with having a common architecture consideration of where DERMS fits in and where these customer resources fit into the management of the grid. We need a communication infrastructure with cybersecurity to be able to implement that integration. As Richard said, we need market and regulatory constructs and standards and policy is what that means, that really facilitates the integration of these resources in standard ways. Then we can build these resources into our planning, into our build, and so we can evaluate electric vehicle charging as a non-wires alternative to grid investment. We need to continue to work on the systems that will manage these distributed resources. We call them DERMS. We're working on an open DERMS tool that we'll be coordinating with NREL on. And then these things can be combined into platforms that allow all the stakeholders to participate. And finally, we have transmission system operators and distribution system operators. The system operators that manage the overall market have to coordinate very closely with distribution systems where these resources can impact the grid. So these are all areas for coordination of developments, demonstrations, and research around the world that I'm very excited about and talking about today as well. So with that, I'll turn it back to Richard and look forward to the discussion.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much, Mark, for presenting such a sharp and clear overall perspective. And really, you see, you make the point where, of course, costs are declining, renewables are pervasively deployed, and at the same time, of course, EV can contribute to the stabilization of all of that. But the key is really the smart integration. And the spin concept you presented is a good example. What Killian introduced is also a very good path to this. But of course, also, I grabbed a key point to me in your presentation, which is, and you did not really mention it, which is all of this cost and might cost a lot, but you need to create conditions so that investors are funding this and that deployments really happen. And this is where you put up the point of the resilience. Resilience being a wild card for the value stream. That's fantastic, fantastic. And then you come up with those 7 challenges to be worked on. So this is really setting up the stage for the coming presentation, where I would like to invite the CEO of BSES Yamuna Power Limited, Mr. Amarjit Singh. And I will be very interested to hear actually his viewpoint on India's renewable commitment and the steps that need to be taken to achieve this target. The floor is yours, Amarjit.
Yeah, I think I'm audible.
Very well.
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Richard. And I think I would also like to congratulate ISGF for organizing this wonderful event on this very pertinent topic. It's my privilege to share the platform with Mr. KVS Baba, CMD Posoko, and other learned dignitaries, and give my views on the very important and much relevant topic in the context of initiatives required to be taken for clean environment. It is heartening to see that whole world is uniting towards making efforts to protect global environment. It is our joint responsibility to make this world a better place to live in and also give better global environment to our future generations. Shifting from conventional power generation to renewable power is one of such initiatives. Government has taken very bold and positive initiatives for the same. In 2015 in Paris Climate Summit, the government of India had said that it will install 175 gigawatt of renewable power by 2022. This was one of the largest renewable capacity expansion programs in the world. And it's very heartening to see that in spite of the COVID-19 pandemic, we will be able to achieve this, and we have already achieved 103 gigawatt and almost 50 gigawatt is in the pipeline. India has also committed Panchamrits in the recently held 6th UN Climate Change Conference of parties in Glasgow. And accordingly, India has to enhance our non-fossil energy capacity to 500 gigawatt, meet 50% of energy from RE, reduce total projected carbon emission by 1 billion tons by 2030, reduction of carbon intensity of economy to less than 45% by 2030, and net zero target by 2070. A lot of efforts are required to translate this vision into reality, not only from government through policies and support, but also from all the stakeholders like various industries, organizations, and also individuals. Government is playing their part by providing opportunities and promoting its generation and usage through various incentives and schemes. Like recently, in a significant move aimed at gradually reducing thermal power generation, the government has amended norms to allow power generators to bundle renewable energy under existing power purchase agreements. As per revised guidelines, thermal and hydro generation companies can set up renewable energy generation capacity either by themselves or through developers by open bids and supply it to the consumers under the existing PPAs. According to the statement, as the cost of renewable energy is less than that of thermal energy, the gains from the unbundling of renewable energy with thermal will be shared between the generators and distribution companies or other procurers on a 50-50 basis, subject to some capping of 7 paisa for the generators. I think this is a very bold move and very a positive move which the government has taken and supported the RE commitment. Even the government has announced a production linked incentive scheme for manufacture of highly efficiency solar PV modules with present outlay of rupees 4,500 crores. Government is planning to increase this outlay to rupees 24,000 crores to make India an exporter of solar equipments. Target of additional 10 gigawatt integrated domestic manufacturing capacity of high efficiency PV modules with rupees 17,200 crore investment. Promotion of rooftop solar up to village level through promotional programs. FAME scheme towards promoting EV and its charging infrastructure with capacity outlay of 10,000 crores. There is a need for bottoms up approach by all the stakeholders with yearly target-based programs to reduce emissions and strive for net zero by 2070. Key stakeholders include DISCOMs and large consumers like manufacturing and service industries will have to take steps to switch and have proper mix of RE power. Other big drivers for power consumption will be e-mobility. In near future, all stakeholders need to take steps through policies and schemes to ensure that e-mobility be powered up through renewable power. We will be able to achieve the goals and get the desired results only by collective efforts. In addition to the efforts required to scale up the renewable energy, power generation, efforts will also be required to handle the challenge of RE integration of quantum as large as 500 gigawatt with the grids. There are immense opportunities and benefits of renewable power, but at the same time, it has its own challenges. Since the renewable source like wind and solar are very intermittent and variable, which pose lot of challenges for power scheduling and grid safety. There is requirement to plan and encourage the use of energy storage solutions, vehicle to grid solutions, microgrids, and automated demand responses programs so as to provide the much needed support for load management and grid stability, along with minimizing the use of conventional sources of power. This is very important for grid security and reliability, especially during the RE transition period, like in the evening and morning hours, or to take care of sudden weather changes. The role and contribution of various stakeholders will be very critical for RE integration with the grids, since they have to come forward and adopt these new technologies like DER and ADR, and to compromise some of their comforts to contribute for the bigger cause of clean world environment for themselves and for future generation, and make this world a better place to live. It will also involve not only technology upgradation, but also capacity building of manpower resources to make them ready for these opportunities and challenges. At present, the price of some of the key contributors like electrical vehicles, batteries, etc., which will be play important role in distributed energy resources or grid integration stability is high. So government will have to take steps to accelerate and shorten the product acceptance time cycle. Now you will appreciate that the solar prices have become affordable now and are in the range of around 2.4 to 2.5 rupees per unit. But it took 11 years to come to that affordable level from rupees 16 per unit some 11 years back. So here in this case, we have to see that how we can shorten this product acceptance time cycle. And also as regards the battery energy storage system, we will see that the footprint of the battery energy storage system is 2 times that of the electric substation. So if we want to build a 1 megawatt hour of BESS, then it requires 2 times more space as compared to 1 MVA substation. Well, similarly, if you will go for best cost, it is 3 to 4 times with that of the electrical installation. So all these things have to be looked into, and especially in the city like Delhi, we are also having space constraints. So these things will become much more relevant in the context of the place-to-place requirements. These challenges will also be there. In addition to that, I would like to say that the transition to RE energy, we should not think that there is an option to it. Rather, it is the necessity. So we all should come forward and contribute to make it successful. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you, Mr. Singh. Thank you very much for your call for action. And I think we should take very seriously what you presented if we consider what Yamuna Power Limited has been able to achieve in the past years, like being able to handle more than 100% growth in peak load served since the privatization, and also the incredible loss reduction of almost 55% that you've been able to achieve between 2002 and 2020. So thank you very much for your testimony and recommendation and a very clear call for action. I would like now that we complement testimony and recommendations with another Indian utility, and I would like to invite Sandeep Bangia from Tata Power Company Limited to share with us his perspective. The floor is yours.
Hi, good evening, and thank you, Richard. Thank you, Richard, for giving me this opportunity, and thank you, ISGF, for allowing me to share my thoughts. So I actually was wondering as to, I am representing a power utility, but I am working on the electric vehicle mobility or electric vehicle charging space within the company. So I was wondering why is it that I'm a part of this forum about renewable energy and EV charging? But then, we all love Dr. Regi Pillai, so that's why I'm here. And maybe I'll be able to add a couple of pointers to all the lot of things that have been said from for the past speakers. To begin with, I think I loved the way Mr. Bawa talked about the renewable energy and EV, which is he's called the revolution. So I think it's no short of the revolution, and that's a fantastic thing. I'm going to borrow it and I'm going to use it quite often here on. So yes, I think we are in the middle of a revolution, combination of renewable energy, the focus towards that, and the focus towards movement to from IC engine to electric vehicle mobility. This is where the future of mobility lies. So I'm just going to talk about from the charge point charge point operator's perspective, uh, the kind of things that can be done, the kind of things that we are doing. Uh, I think there are three key things from the charge point operator's perspective that broadly form the basis of this discussion, which is I call it the role of smart charging. Uh, the smart charging combined with a smart grid is something that can deliver the following. Number one, I think the easiest thing is that we consume uh, renewable energy for the purpose of charging electric vehicles. So the source of the charging for EV charger is going to be green. It's a combination of solar rooftop plus wind and storage. This is the easiest thing. It's everybody understands that. That's the obvious one. The second thing, obviously, is that something that we are doing in Mumbai, and this is something that is possibly likely to become, a norm even in the rest of the country. The customer pays a bit of a premium to get the energy that he wants, and as a utility, we inject the same amount of energy into the grid, which is green. So this is something which is, the green transmission in that sense. So you can ensure that the charging for an electric vehicle is coming through a green source by just telling the power utility.
We lost your sound. Hello, Sandeep, can you hear me? We lost you.
This is the second very simple thing that can be done. It is being done. And in fact, this is a very, very popular way of doing things in for a lot of corporates in Mumbai, which is and we are actively promoting this combination, green energy plus EV charging. It works best because a lot of these large corporates, most organizations, small, big, very big, are committed to RE100 and EV100 in that sense to ensure that the sustainability goals of the organization and hence India are met. The third thing very clearly is, uh, this is something that has been experimented in European countries, that you charge when the grid is at its greenest. There are times, peak times or off-peak times, when the grid grids supplied in the grid is at the greenest. Uh, it moved from gray to green in that sense, and that is the time you charge. Now, this is a capability that exists from our charging platform that we have developed, and of course, the smart grid. So this is an information or intimation that can flow in from smart grids to a smart charging ecosystem like what we have to tell the customer that, hey, while the time of the day charging is suitable for managing and balancing the load, uh, a, a slightly more evolved customer can look at the fact that this is the time of the day when the grid is at its greenest. And if it And even if it means paying a bit of a premium, an evolved customer will seek actively uh, his vehicle getting charged through the green energy. Now, these are the three things which are very, very simple, can be done here and now. It is just that, you got to evolve to that level by to which this can be offered. Now, this is something that I always say. A smart utility like ours can do much more on the grid for EV charging than the charging itself. And I'm talking about the second life of battery. This is something that we can all pick up batteries which are completed their useful life inside the vehicle, and then even if the vehicle does not find the batteries suitable, a distribution company is always going to find it suitable because there is no constraint on the performance of that battery as much as it is in the car. Secondly, uh, using the concept of second life of battery to ensure that the sustainability goals are met, and by ensuring that the battery does not go into the landfill until many more decades of its second life. Now, the combining it with let's say things like vehicle to grid, which I think Amarjeet Singh ji also touched upon in the previous session. Now, these are the things that we can do, and I always say this. Uh, the price plans are easier to manage. I was seeing the presentation from one of the previous speakers, very elaborately mentioned the price plans that are possible and doable. I think there is a lot of learning for all of us there to ensure that things fall in place. And of course, uh, the ability to do things which are not necessarily always economically suitable, but sustainable to the extent. And I always have this, uh, call it a dream or call it an ideal situation that I charge my car. And some of you would have heard me in the past, have heard this example, and I keep repeating it wherever I have an opportunity. Here is a car that I have, uh, which has got, let's say, 40 kilowatt of battery, which is enough and more for a household for the next 3 days or so. So I charge my battery in my office, go to my, farm retreat, maybe 100 kilometers away, uh, log in my battery to my house. So my house gets powered from the battery that is charged inside my car. It lights up my house for the night, and when the sun comes up in the morning, my car charges back through the solar rooftop. So I have an off-grid house, which is taken care largely by solar rooftop and electric mobility. A combination of second life of battery, combination of solar rooftop, and combination of V2G. Now, this is something which is not in the realm of a distant possibility. It's happening. In fact, in the US, Ford 500 as a truck, that truck is being sold on the premise. One of the features is that the battery storage is such that if your power goes off in your house, which it has been in the last few months or so, there have been outages in the US some places. It can take care of your power situation for the next 3 days. They are actually selling it on that as a feature. Now, these are the kind of things that is doable, and a combination of smart charging capabilities, which is coming from charge point operators like us, and the distribution utilities, which also we are as a DNA. A combination of these two things is what is going to make it work together, and this is what we are bringing in. And finally, I think just to complete, the migration to EVs is only a matter of how. It's not a question of whether it's happening. EVs are coming, like, make no mistakes. So we have to align our systems, our ecosystem, our grid planning accordingly. It is not something that, and these are the things that get, a couple of things which are accelerating this. I would say one of them is COVID. Uh, People are talking more sustainability things than ever. Uh, a very small trigger in the UK, for example, the trucker strike, in which the fuel pumps could not get fuel, that has triggered a huge uh, interest amongst the car owners or vehicle owners on electric mobility. So I think these are all small triggers, but it's only a matter of when. India's Paris goals is not likely to get met and including Glasgow's, if we don't move to electric mobility in a very, very fast manner. So all we need to do is just marry the smart grids, the distribution systems, the renewable energy forces that we are all already having, along with the smart charging capabilities that people like us are bringing in to ensure that the future is bright, the future is sustainable. Thank you so much.
Thank you so much, Sandeep. It's a really complementary, very relevant Indian perspective, zooming from the EV side. And you made clear that the question is now to do it here and now. And even if it is a premium for customers, the customers are asking for charging from renewables. Let's keep looking at the landscape from the electric vehicle integration perspective with a presentation from Lonneke Driessen-Mutters regarding incredible activities going on in the Netherlands and also some integration technologies that are developed by very active association and alliance in the Netherlands. Lonneke, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Richard. Can you hear me?
Perfect.
Okay, so good afternoon, good evening, everybody. My name is Lonneke Driessen, and I work for a Dutch organization called ELATNL. And we were founded in 2009, so 12 years ago, by the Dutch electricity grid operators, so the distribution system operators and the transport system operator. Those organizations decided to join forces in exploring the development of electric transportation and more particularly what the impact is going to be on our electricity grids. We've been working for a decade now. We've learned a lot and there is still so much to do. And for this presentation, I would like to take you through our market outlooks that we are working on. So first of all, regarding the Netherlands, we have as a country very ambitious goals for the electrification of transportation. We are of course part of the European Union, and EU targets aim for 2035 to achieve their first zero emission transport goals. But the Netherlands have targeted 5 years earlier, so 2030, for a lot of zero emission transport goals. And to name a few, for example, all new sold passenger cars should be 100% electrical or hydrogen based, so zero emission by 2030. And all buses in operation must be 100% zero emission. So the governmental climate in the Netherlands is very open and positive toward electrification. And another thing that we have going for us in the Netherlands is that we are world champion when it comes to charging infrastructure. So per inhabitant, we have the most charging stations available. So we have a very good charging infrastructure in place. And also what's really important to know, which is a little bit unique, we have full roaming since 2015. So that means that an EV driver in the Netherlands can charge everywhere with the same contract. So regardless who their mobility service provider is, if they see a charging station, it will work for them. So with this positive governmental climate and this good infrastructure being in place, that means that the electric vehicle adoption is really going well in the Netherlands. And as it stands now, the prediction is that the energy demand for mobility will match the energy demand of all the households combined in the Netherlands by 2035. So it is a reality, and we as grid operators and transport system operator, of course, we need to be ready because our grids will distribute the energy needed to charge all those vehicles. So very condensed in a very simple 3-step approach. This is what we are doing as grid operators. So first of all, we are looking at the market. So what can we expect? When can we expect it? And where can we expect those vehicles that need to be charged? And of course, based on the market outlooks, we do our grid modeling to, of course, do our resource planning, but also identify hotspots where we need to focus our attention first. And of course, where should we target our smart charging? Previous speakers have touched upon this topic as well. So one thing, of course, we as grid operators will do is reinforce the grid, but it would also be great if we could distribute the charging need during the time of day to make much more efficient use of our electricity grids and thus lower the overall cost to society. And lastly, what is an important topic for us as grid operators as well, and so unfortunately we don't have time to go into this today in this presentation, but it's of course the financing. We as an industry are not very fast, so it would be really good if we could pre-invest when we see the transition to electric mobility on the horizon. It would be good if we can already start investing in the grid so that we are ready when the demand is there. But of course, that means that our regulators need to allow for investments that are not needed at this moment, but will be needed in a couple of time, just to save us some time. But for this presentation, I'd like to talk you through the market outlooks that we have worked on and are working on. So here you see an overview of all the outlooks we do, and it is per modality because depending on what needs to be charged, there is a difference in use and in energy demands and in timing. So these outlooks we develop after not only market research, but we do a lot of interviews with a lot of stakeholders, electric vehicle manufacturers, policymakers, consumers, of course, academia, fleet operators, the logistics sector, and this very long list. And we ask all these parties, are you planning for electrification? What are your use cases? Where do you think you will want to charge? What will your charging pattern be? And we combine it with the field data that we have. So we also do a lot of data analysis. Of course, the data we have is always looking back. And with the interviews, we try to look to the future. And we do a lot of modeling. And we started with this approach back in 2019, where our first outlook was regarding passenger cars. So what can we expect regarding electrification of passenger cars? Where do you want to charge and how do they charge? But of course, a very different charging behavior are fast chargers. So that was our second outlook. The next one was regarding public transport buses. Of course, the way buses move around and the size of buses is again different use than passenger cars. Then we looked at city logistics. The reason why city logistics is a separate topic is because of the very ambitious climate goals that a lot of Dutch municipalities have, where they want to keep the air quality inside their city good. So they want clean air. So they want to ban all fossil fuel cars from their city centers. Of course, that means that this industry will move very rapidly because they have this additional governmental push for electrification. The next one we did on delivery vans. Also, they drive around in a slightly different way and charge, of course. Then the next one was the long haul trucks, which are of course huge batteries that need very fast charging. And we also asked the industry, so what are your driving patterns and where do you stop and when do you think you want to be charging? And the list goes on. Next was inland shipping. So in the Netherlands, we have a lot of transportation over water. Of course, the Netherlands has a lot of water. So that's why we have a lot of shipping. So of course, they will move to electrification powertrains also. And the last one, the most recent was building equipment. All the diggers and all the stuff you need to build also must be 100% zero emission shortly. So we were 2 years down the line with our outlooks, and we decided to renew the outlook for passenger cars because, and I'll show you in the next slide, the adoption of electrification is really accelerating in the Netherlands. So it's going faster than we predicted in 2019. So in 2021, this year, we updated the outlook for passenger cars, and we will continue to update all these other outlooks because the market is changing very, very rapidly. So for instance, this is the example of the EV prognosis that we had in 2021. And what we see that in 2 years' time, the expectation for EVs and charging infrastructure has grown. For EVs, 30% more, and for charging stations, we see 35% increase in charging stations being installed than we predicted 2 years ago. And this is where we as ELAT try to match the vision of grid operators. As you know, if you are a utility, you look a long time ahead, you look 20, 30 years into the future. But of course, this market is changing every year, every 2 years, things are changing. So with these outlooks, we try to combine the world of the DSO with the world of e-mobility and the exciting times over there. And as I mentioned, this data we implement in the grid models, where we not only calculate these changes, but of course also the PV integration. And in the Netherlands, we are also moving towards electrification of our heating. Currently, we use natural gas for heating, but that also needs to be electrified. So this is one piece of the puzzle that we as grid operators need to know how to prepare. So what you see here is the regional spread. This is the map of the Netherlands. Maybe you recognize it a little bit. And this is the prognosis on where in the Netherlands the charging infrastructure will be located in general. But if you look to the right of the slide, you see that it varies what type of chargers. And this has, of course, to do with the demography of the Netherlands. If you look to the top left, the home chargers, the darker parts are where people will charge at home, and this is the more rural area of the Netherlands. And in the Netherlands, people who live in a rural area are fortunate enough to be able to park their car next to their house so they can charge at their own premises. And of course, home chargers have a smaller capacity and they charge when people are at home, so they have a slightly different charging pattern. So that's why it's important for us to know, because it has a different impact on the grid and where we need to invest. The semi-public charge, so the public charging stations, will be located more in the densely populated area of the Netherlands, Amsterdam, The Hague, Rotterdam. There, people just live more closely together, so they don't have the luxury of being park in their own on their own premises. So they will have to park out on the street, and that's where you see a different type of charger. And of course, you also see the workplace chargers and the fast charging stations. So with these outlooks, we're not only looking at when can we expect, where can we expect, but also what can we expect. And all these different types of charging situations have different charging behavior, which of course is important for our grid modeling. So this is unfortunately all I have time for today. If you'd like more information, please contact me and I'll be happy to share much more information if you find it useful.
Thank you so much, Lonneke, for such a presentation and sharing the excitement that you have in the Netherlands. The dynamics is just incredible. You made the point. It's really a matter of getting all the stakeholders teaming up together, right? And then they succeed to come up with the incredible infrastructures. You're the world champion of the ratio of charging stations. But also, I think it's very interesting how you've been running those outlook per modality, and also being able to segment the needs and come up with action plans with the spread per type of charging to really be able to manage where and what to expect. And of course, if you allow me, I want to mention the Open Charge Alliance that was incepted also in the Netherlands, and I guess through the exact same dynamics. And I draw the attention to the audience about this alliance and this incredible OCPP charging station protocol that is pervasively spreading all over the world. Thank you very much, Lonneke. And now I would like to follow up on actually utilities and what utility associations can see and share with us. I would like to call Lawrence Jones if he is online. I'm not sure he is yet with us as he was traveling in Asia. I'm checking on the screen. I don't see him. So you know what? It's very relevant to actually right now move to a very interesting presentation of what can do major consulting firms regarding all those issues that we have been describing, all potential solutions that people may, whether they would like to explore, whether they have done it, or whether they plan to do it. So please, Anurag Jory, share with us your assessment and best recommendations.
Sure. Thanks very much. Pleasure being here. I'll just share my screen and then I'll start. Is my screen visible?
Very, very visible. And you're loud and clear.
All right. That I always am. Right. Thank you. Thanks very much. I think I was looking at these presentations with a lot of interest, and I think I learned a lot during what was said during this session. So thank you very much for that. My presentation is around what will it take for the RE and EV integration in distribution grid to really happen in India. Essentially, we all know we have got huge targets. Everyone is excited about those targets of adding renewables to our grid, and it has got major repercussions for all actors, right from generation to transmission to distribution, and not only for these utilities but also for some of the large-scale players in the corporate and industrial clusters who are actually the consumers. However, given the topic at hand and the time we have, I would rather talk about the distribution utilities. I think, essentially, the distribution utilities need to redesign their business models. They need to digitize the way they operate, right? They need to become more customer oriented, and they also need to innovate as we move forward for value added services. Now, all of that is a given with the RE coming in, but how does bringing in the element of EV also into the mix change that? Or what are the key trends we see when we bring both of them together? So essentially, the way Accenture looks at this is that, while we could talk about these trends into maybe 3 or 4 non-exhaustive areas, but I think the key call out is that yes, there are multiple challenges, but there also are unbounded opportunities. So if we really look at how the DER integration into the grid is happening, at one end, what we find is the utilities being very touchy about losing some of the best customers to things like rooftop solar. But at the same time, there are new business models opening up, new revenue streams opening up when you start looking at what a battery energy storage system can do for you, or for that matter, as we look at the ramp up of the EVs, both globally as well as in the Indian market. So it throws up a lot of interesting new revenue opportunities when we look at how the DR sources are getting integrated into the grid. Similarly, on the grid management side, yes, there are issues related to back of the meter kind of stuff which happens. It makes it much more difficult for us to kind of resolve issues there. But at the same time, what we are also seeing is progressive legislation. We saw about a month ago the GDAM, or the green day-ahead market, which has been launched. So essentially, each of these issues or challenges is being more than taken away by some of the improvements which are happening in the entire dynamics. Another thing which I would like to call out is the consumer trends, because what has happened is maybe 2 years ago, had I spoken to you, I would have cited the example of Germany, where people were willing to pay more for renewables. But today that's actually happening in India as we speak. So I hope a lot of you will know about what Adani is doing in Mumbai. But I think Tata Power is again trying to do that in Mumbai, which is, for a 100% renewable energy, you pay me 66 paisa a unit more and lo and behold, you'll get 100% renewable energy with certificate. So I think those are the kind of things which are happening, which are opening up a lot of avenues for the utility sector to build in new revenue streams, new business models, and maybe endear themselves to the customers in ways which were previously unseen. Because we are talking about EVs in particular, let's take an example of what an EV charging infrastructure, for example, could do. So like how the RTS integration was widely debated for its bidirectional flow, right? Understanding the energy use profile data can also help in seamlessly integrating the grid and also allow utilities to gain advantage of the load pattern, right? So if we really look at the EV charging infra, it comes with multiple aspects, each of them with varied impacts on the grid. Now, if we observe the charging profiles of various use cases, DISCOMs will obviously have both challenges and opportunities to ponder. So for example, the charging profiles at work, fleet, and home can have very different timelines. So typically an unplanned and monitored profiles can cause demand surges. Careful study around this can also ensure that what we can do is that when the peak can coincide with charging and the utilities can appropriately monetize during those periods. So that is very relevant. That is actually happening at multiple places, maybe not so much in India, but a lot of places across the world. Similarly, the smart demand response measures can help in ensuring that the charging happens during the off-peak hours, and the batteries can be allowed to act as balancers during the peak hours. Similarly, there are a host of other applications like vehicle to X or vehicle to multiple, vehicle to building, vehicle to whatever. How you are able to use the vehicle batteries for not only storage but also as enablers for a host of other applications. So essentially, yes, there will be different use cases which will provide different values to the grid. But essentially, the idea is that if we use what is coming out of these use cases, then we believe that there are more opportunities than challenges. Again, I think one view which we have taken, and this is basis the work we have done outside India as well, is that there are multiple challenges and opportunities. Now, however, if we really look at it in the Indian context, there's no point being overwhelmed by so many challenges and opportunities. Essentially, we take an India view and we mark it out in terms of kind of impact it can do and the kind of timelines we are looking at. What we find is, at least as an analysis from an Accenture side, what we find is that within India, over the next 2 to 3 years, where the maturity of the maximum utilities lies, essentially we need to address issues related to data quality and how we can bring in the disparate systems of control together. I think if we are able to manage those two pieces well, then the other challenges which might be upcoming in the next 3 to 5 years could be seized and addressed in a very easy manner. What I'm also happy to report is that we see concerted efforts both on the side of the government as well as the private sector, private DISCOMs, towards the issues related to data quality as well as bringing in integration of the various systems. For example, we are right now starting a program with the Ministry of Power where we are trying to see how IT/OT integration can happen across the utilities in India, right? Similarly, on the data quality front, we see so many initiatives which have been taken to democratize the data and remove the asymmetry which used to happen between the consumers and the utilities. And all of that helps in confidence building, right? So those are around the short-term challenges. In our view, if we really want to look at the longer-term challenges and convert them into opportunities, we believe that there is a very simple yet and maybe intuitive, however, framework. However, we don't see that everyone across the world has followed that, and that's the reason I am presenting that as well. We believe that when we are going to look into the future, we will have to use a lot of digital and data-led work, and essentially the right point to start would be to start simulation ground up, or what in Accenture parlance we also call zero-based simulations. Essentially, we need to model a number of different factors which are coming in. It is not only about renewables, it is also about energy efficiency. What is being achieved out of all the initiatives which are coming out of energy efficiency? What is happening out of the changing consumer preferences? So, and what is obviously coming out of the renewables, etc. So all of that needs to be modeled very well before we actually get into the implementation, right? And once that modeling has been done, the second important point is to really help in visualization and analysis such that the decision makers are able to take the right decisions as to what should be the right business interventions that should happen to convert these challenges into opportunities. And once those business interventions have been finalized, that is when we should look at our processes rather than the other way around. So the processes have to follow the kind of business interventions we want to do in the market. And we believe that if this is done in the right manner, then a utility of the future will look like this, wherein the key or the heart of the system will be the DRMS, it will be the customer, and it will be some of the smart data acquisition systems which actually allow you to take the right decisions through operational agility. On that note, I would like to end, and I'll be happy to answer any questions. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for this very, very clear presentation, where I think you make the point that the different use cases can provide different values, and this is really a key in the approach, where you show that there are new possible value streams and therefore new business models that can be derived from those value streams. And definitely there should be more benefits than challenges. And this is your claim. This is what I guess you're able to demonstrate to anyone who is asking you an assessment on their current situation. And of course, to do so, you need to start from a bottom up to really see what is the grid system planning to be put in place. And the last but not least, the DERMS it's really the master building block that will allow interconnecting the different groups and stakeholders. And this is, again, actually, this confirm things that have been presented through different angles earlier. So this is very exciting, because now we've been around actually the theme with a framing of the theme, then we characterized the challenges, and we heard testimonies and recommendations and calls for actions from utilities, from major players on EV and EV integration. And we see that there are players like large consulting firms that definitely can come and boost actually the journey for anyone, any utility who would like to move forward. And I'm sure it's the same regarding EPRI. I know EPRI has this incredible and very agile capability to do such a thing. So I think this presentation now is really actually concluding our round of presentation. As I just got the information that Lawrence Jones cannot join. As I mentioned earlier, he was traveling back from Korea to the US, and unfortunately Anant Venkateswaran cannot be with us today. So I think we can open up, and we still have 10 minutes for Q&A. And I would like first to ask our chair if he wants to make some wrapping comment as you can prepare questions you would like to ask the speakers. So please, Mr. Baba.
It's interesting, no doubt. Am I audible, first of all?
Very audible.
Okay. Okay. I mean, interesting presentations and this thing. First, I agree. We have to take actions on all the fronts. We have to take actions on policy and regulations without doubt. Technology has to be, and the tools have to be developed. And I mean, if we want faster and quicker solutions have to be brought, and all around research has to take place. I'm very happy to note that, of course, we know a lot of activities going on, and many countries are giving very good encouragement. So hope for the best, and we should try to get a cleaner air with a, smooth ride to all.
Oh, thank you so much for your encouragement, Mr. Baba. And I'd like to come up with the first question to Mr. Singh, as he shared with us a very enticing call for action regarding India's renewable commitment and what need to be done to achieve the targets. But I would be interested if you would like to share some more about BSES plans for the transition to renewable energy and the steps being taken to build the grid flexibility to support our renewable energy.
Yeah. Yes, yeah. I would like to give my views on that. Actually, BSES is a very responsible, understands its responsibility towards the society and also towards the consumers at large. And I think in the past so many years, which you have rightly addressed, that we have worked on many areas, and out of that one was the reduction in T&D losses. So as a utility, we have reduced our losses from around 53% to in the range of around 7%. So we have always been doing our bit in playing our part in all the areas pertaining to the power distribution. And as regards the renewable steps, I would like to say that we have taken many steps, and timely, I will say. We have started aggressively in making our portfolio green. And in that, BYPL's RE share in our total portfolio will reach around 32%, and BRPL's share will reach around 37% by financial year 2024. So overall, it will be at a BSES level, it will be 35%. So which is, I think, right steps. And in view of the recently announced scheme by the government for flexibility in generation and scheduling of thermal and hydropower stations through bundling with renewable energy and storage power, I think we have an opportunity to increase it further going on, because it will also support our cause. And at present, if you will see that we have in terms of the annual input, we would the BSES will be having around 25% of its input requirement by financial year 24 by the renewables. So these are the steps we are taking, and the future demand, whatever the expected growth we are expecting in the future, we are making efforts to get it achieved by tying up with the renewable sources only. So these are the one of the initiatives towards making the portfolio green. And in addition, I would like to say, tell you about the rooftop solar. One of my friend was saying that DISCOMs were not supporting for the rooftops because of their own reasons. But I'll tell you that BYPL was the first one to give a rooftop connection in 2015. And at present, BRPL is having 89 megawatt peak of rooftop solar, and BYPL is having 29 megawatt of rooftop solar. And we are having aggressive solar programs so as to reach a potential of more than 900 megawatt in the BSES area. So, and as regards the transition to EV, we are having a fleet of around 600 vehicles, and already 5% of this that are our electrical vehicles, either through lease or purchase. And we have a plan that by 2030, whole of our fleet will be converted to EVs, and as per the aging of the vehicles, we will replace them by the electrical vehicles. And BSE DISCOMs are aggressively spearheading Geo and Steady Switch Delhi program. And recently, Honorable Transport Minister of Delhi has launched single window program for private and semi-public EV charging. So we are participating in that program. All the 3 DISCOMs of Delhi are participating in that program, and we will facilitate the establishment of EV chargers. So for private and semi-public consumers. In terms of green over grids through rooftop solar or battery storage, BYPL has installed 4 microgrids in 2019 in its division offices, limiting the energy usage from grids to only 8%. So we have taken steps in this direction also, and we are looking for the benefits which we are getting, and the opportunities further in this, that how we can enhance this also in the coming time. Recently, BRPL has launched GIZ supported Shivalik microgrid project with 100 kilowatt peak rooftop solar, EV charging facility, and about 400 kilowatt hour battery energy storage system. So, being a responsible industry, we are taking the right steps, and we have also carried out few studies for RE integration, both at utility scale and DRs. So, with the NREL, USAID, and GIS, covering capacity crate of RE, impact of EV charging and BESS on distribution network, design of TOU rate for residential consumers, potential of DR for peak reduction, impact of rooftop on grid. So all these things, all these steps we have taken, and going forward, we will take much more steps so as to achieve the government goals and make the environment clean. Thank you, Richard.
Thank you very much. And I would like to ask Mark and Killian if they could elaborate on a very exciting point, which is this smart power integration modules. You see the kind of magic box, and of course with this concept of open source tools and software. So how far is it to be something a concrete, usable, or commercial product, industrial grade commercial product?
That's a really good question, Richard. All of the technologies are there, and right now you pull them together with individual modules for the interface to the grid, for the smart inverter, for the energy storage controller, but to put them together into a common box to lower the cost is something that's just being developed now. And you're just coming from a meeting in Dingle yesterday here in Ireland. I can see where the policy and regulations is so important, because right now in Ireland it's almost impossible to use your vehicle or even energy storage device to back up your house, because the cost of the interface to the grid is so high, and the requirements for relays and protection basically means that you have to build a substation at your meter in order to have backup. So those are the things that we have to prove, that we can build safe and reliable systems that it's okay from a policy perspective to implement at the building level, and be able to use these resources for add that value stream to all these flexibility value streams. It's such a huge opportunity.
Yeah, I guess this is really a key point, to be able even to monetize more or being more sharp and detailed on how to monetize the resilience, where this is, has you said on your slides that resilience maybe, and I think it is, the wild card value stream to make that happen. to be the enabler, to unlock actually investments and decision. Fantastic. And Kilian, do you have anything to add? So I would like to ask here, Lonneke, actually, on about the same question with what she knows about the Open Charge Alliance, which is a global platform for open protocols. How this is contributing or matching with this concept of smart power, integrated magical DERB that was also, by the way, presented by our friend from Accenture. Lonneke, please.
Sure, thank you, Richard. So indeed, having so the name we sometimes use is energy management system or building energy management system. So this is from a grid operator perspective, a great solution, because that will mean that behind the meter, the energy will be shared, and this will maximize integration of renewable energy and limit the load on the electricity grid, which is of course also a good idea. So we do a lot of research and a lot of testing. Of course, you know that one of the devices that the energy management system must interface with is a charging station, of course, and behind the charging station, the electric vehicle. As you know, the communication between the vehicle and the charging station is also really important, whether it is either CHAdeMO or CCS or ISO 598. So the thing is, at the moment, what we see is that the energy management system market is still very diverse. So there is not one unique standard available yet. So what we are looking at is more like interoperable node that can speak different languages. So the language used for HVAC, maybe another language used for solar power, maybe another language used for charging stations. And as it stands now, we think that is maybe the way the market will start, that it will be multiple languages matched in the middle, which is not so complex to do. And even if we were to move towards an open source solution, that will be perfect, because then you sort of take that out of the equation. From the part of OCPP, what we are working on is making sure that the routing of the messages, maybe this is a bit too complex for now, but all the different information that needs to be shared with either a back office, with the vehicle, with the energy management system, means that there are more actors discussing with each other, exchanging information with each other. And for that, you need a little bit more advanced networking, routing, and that's what we're working on currently. To improve that, with keeping in mind the full backwards compatibility of the existing infrastructure. So the improvements we are making on the routing front must work with OCPP 1.6 to 2.1 all as it's possible. So we don't want to throw too much change into the system. It is a really important topic, and I can say that we haven't figured it out yet. So we need it, and technically we're going to make it work.
Thank you so much, Lonneke, and of course this is echoing again with Rodney McGee, who was not here but was proposing in his presentation, which is really that the policy and the standards might still be a kind of roadblock and a challenge to be worked on, and I guess this is another call for action that I gladly share with you, with Mark, with Kilian, and Rodney McGee here, and I'm sure Anurag Jory would join us, so that maybe in 1 year from now, or not too far from now, well, we can come up and declare victory on this challenge.
I think you have that right, Richard. The challenge is to make sure that we work together so that we're not all trying to solve the problem at the same time in different ways, and accept the challenge.
That's perfect. I like the song. I like the song. I like the dynamics. I like the mood. And I'm looking forward teaming up with you all to make that happen. Having said that, I need to thank very much the faculty of speaker, the incredible lineup that we had today. They all prepared incredibly well this very important session. They all came up with sharp, clear points and proposals. We see that many things are going on. And of course, we have to thank ISGF organizing those gatherings. And I think there are enablers for the industry, but also
Thank you.
no, it is well deserved. Also, let's say an enabler regarding policy, and this is a heartful thank to you and your team for your hard work. Thank you so much.